I'll admit right off the bat, sitting and reflecting on that Monday morning a year ago, I was not in the best of moods. My wife Sheila used to be as interested in sex as I was. When we had both retired the previous year at 60, she from teaching, I from the British Transport Police. Okay, maybe we didn't do it like rabbits every day, but we did it often. At first, sometimes twice a day. By that Monday, a year later, I could barely remember the last time it happened. My wife says the lack of hobbies made me bored. Boredom led to depression, and depression led to lethargy. Eventually, I was too tired for intimacy. I, on the other hand, had a different theory. I was depressed because I wasn't having sex, but suspected she was. That was my conundrum. If she wasn't having sex, why wasn't she pining like me? If she is having sex, how and when the hell does she do it? Take that Monday, for example. She was in town and meeting up with Sally, an old high school friend, to chat over coffee. But was it really like that? Yes, it was. I followed her and watched as they met up and went to their favorite coffee shop together. Everything was the same as it had been for the previous 3 weeks. And when she came back an hour or so later, she'd stop for shopping on the way home, and every receipt had the correct date, time, and price code on it. I checked it. I was a cop. That's what we do. On Thursday evenings, she goes to pottery class, and I go to the pub. For those 3 weeks, I went to the pub next to the community center and watched her go in and out exactly on schedule. I even peered through the bloody window and watched her make a pot. There it is, finished and glazed, on the fucking table in front of me, standing there, taunting me. There's no doubt she really did it, just like she says she did. There are no other plausible opportunities for her to meet, hook up, shower, and return without my knowledge. So why do all my instincts tell me she's getting hers elsewhere? The penny dropped. That is, everything fell into place, the following Wednesday. Well, I say penny, but from the sound that went off in my head, it sounded more like an anvil. The first clues were given to me by the towels, and I'm sorry. Doesn't that make any sense? I'll explain. In our house, Wednesday is laundry day. This Wednesday, as I stretched sleepily in bed, Sheila came out of the bathroom with an armful of blue towels. "I'm going to put them in the wash now," she told me, "and will you please get the purple towels out of the closet and put them in both bathrooms?" The system was simple. She changes the towels once a week, and, alternating between the blue and purple sets, she was sure they were all changed regularly. "Will do," I agreed, and did what she asked me to do while she went downstairs to the back room. After breakfast, as I was putting a cup and plate in the sink, she yelled for me to check to see if the washing machine had finished its cycle. I opened the door and looked inside. No. I could see through the glass hatch that the towels were still spinning in the blue and white stain. I started helping her sort out our bed for the next load, pondering the same question that had been bothering me for weeks now. If she's cheating, how? As I worked, I realized there was a thought lurking in the back of my mind, trying to be heard but not getting through. Around 11, we took a coffee break, and sitting in a chaise lounge at the back of the house, I watched the first load of laundry, towels, being hung on a rope. There they were, 4 blue bath sheets, 4 blue hand towels, and at the very end, almost to the side of the house, a white bath sheet. The voice in the back of my mind was now jumping up and down, waving its arms and shouting obscenities in an attempt to finally get my attention. Anvil. Why did a white towel end up in the wash? It wasn't in the laundry basket in the bathroom, I would have noticed. It wasn't used in either bathroom. There was no need for it. In fact, we keep 2 old white bath towels just to use in the summer outside when the grandkids play in the inflatable pool. It was March, and those white towels should have been put away in the back of the closet months ago. Was it possible that she was sleeping with someone in our own home, and it proved easier to hide the evidence by doing it on the damn towels than to leave visible marks on the bedding? It couldn't have been in our bed. I may be a heavy sleeper lately, but I think even I would have noticed her doing it with someone next to me. So, then another anvil fell. Oh my God, it's so fucking obvious. I'm not sluggish because I'm depressed. That bitch is slipping me something. "You look pensive, honey." Her voice broke into my thoughts. "What?" Oh yeah, I've been solving this puzzle in my head for a while, which has been very frustrating. But now it all seems to be starting to make sense. That's good, dear. You have to keep your mind active, she remarked absent-mindedly as if she didn't care, and went back to her book, finishing her coffee. Oh, my mind is fully active. But I kept that thought to myself. So here's my reconstruction of the crime. The suspect, her, gives the victim, me, Rohypnol, and then invites her lover, an unknown subject, into the house, and somewhere an act takes place. Rohypnol. It's so obvious now. 3 months ago, we switched to a new regimen whereby at about 9:30 she brings me a small nightcap of whiskey. Then at 10 we take our pills. A mild sedative to help her sleep, statins for my blood cholesterol, and multivitamins for both of us. She had read, she said, that if you take your medications at the last minute, they are easier to remember and more effective. I made a mental note to scrutinize my pills when I get the chance. But if I'm right, I know how, roughly where, but who? Who could she have called to sneak into the house at a time like this? Hell no! It can't be that annoying, fat little jerk who lives next door, can it? I may have skimped on introductions at the beginning, so since the cast of characters seems to be growing, perhaps it's time for more details. My name is Mark Smith. I used to be Inspector Smith until I retired 2 years ago at the age of 60. I would have become a chief inspector had it not been for one episode early in my career, when a weasel laughed when I told him he was under arrest for breaking his girlfriend's wrist. Unfortunately, he fell down the stairs twice. Nothing was proved, but pretty much screwed up my career prospects, so a promotion from the county police to detective inspector in the British Transport Police was the perfect way to spend the last 5 years of my service. It helped my retirement, too. I've tried to keep myself fit, but there's this lethargy. However, if my suspicions are correct, it will soon pass. I'm 5 feet tall, I'm not bad-looking, and I don't like to be lied to. Sheila, my wife, is about 5'3", slim and slender, with slender rather than lush breasts. Long dark hair and green eyes complete the attractive picture. Our neighbors to our right are an elderly couple we rarely see, and to our left are Julie and the jerk. Apparently his parents named him Justin, probably to fit in with the other damn useless parasites at his hedge fund. I thought of him as a jerk, even though my wife insisted that he was actually a wonderful person, if you got to know him better. Perhaps she got to know him much better than I realized. Julie, on the other hand, was a gem. We only knew her first husband for a couple years before cancer took him. She did a great job raising their twins on her own until they both left for university. After that, I think empty nest syndrome hit her hard, and within 2 years, a jerk came into her life, her bed, and then her house. He's been living there at her place for 5 years, married for 3 years. At the time, I estimated that Julie is probably in her early 50s. She's short, slim, nice to look at, and easy to talk to. I could listen to her husky voice for hours. If she could sing, she'd be a blues legend. Justin was about 5'7" inches, and to keep in shape, he drives his Audi to the gym. What a poser. He gives the appearance of good-natured charm, but if you listen to him closely, he's a sarcastic, arrogant little bastard. He thinks he's so much smarter than everyone else that we don't notice. But I have noticed, and I've bitten into smarter things than he has. He's got a polished to a shine look, like a freshly laid dog turd. I guess on reflection, I don't really like him. To be honest, I don't think he likes me either. So I have a plausible theory about who, how, and where, but no proof. To test the pill situation is simple. I'm not dead yet, so I'll live my life as usual, but on my own terms. Thursday night, my wife left the house at 6:30, as usual, for a pottery class from 7 to 9. She returns about 9:30. As soon as she left, I grabbed a pair of nitrile gloves from a box in the garage and searched my house. What was I looking for? Anything. Something that should have been there or something that shouldn't have been there. In everyday life, we notice things out of place, but when you investigate, it's the oddities, however mundane, that lead to clues. I checked the pills first. The ones she'd presented to me as vitamins were, as I suspected, prescription sedatives. The leaflet enclosed warned against taking them with alcohol. I had spit them out the night before, and in the morning, I felt like a new man. Over the next few hours, I surveyed every room, trying not to leave any trace of it. She doesn't need to know I've been busy. In the end, I decide that there are no obvious signs of sex in any of the spare bedrooms. The sheets are clean and, more importantly, look freshly ironed. I knew those sheets hadn't been washed recently. They hadn't used the bedrooms. Unfortunately, there was no sign of them in our bedroom either, but that's why I was so angry. I found the gold in a chaise lounge in the back of the house. Between the seat cushions of the three-seater sofa, I found a piece of foil. It's part of the wrapper from a ribbed condom, not one I've ever used. Now I know where. They must be having fun on the couch using the towel to catch all the, damn, I don't want to say it, drips. Ew. That image is going to have to change a bit. Presumably she throws the towel in the wash and then comes back to my bed. My marriage is over. Non-negotiable. I could divorce the cow without requiring any proof of her infidelity, but it's so, unsatisfactory. Some cunt gets sex I'm denied. Payback required. I've never considered myself petty. I can rise above most trifling insults, but disrespect of this magnitude, no. It demands a nuclear response, and I wanted to cause fucking Armageddon. Over the next few days, sitting in silence and planning my campaign, I noticed how disinterested my wife was in my mood as, now that I thought about it myself. I didn't care about her either, but I'm the only one of us who knows we're getting a divorce. So every night I smiled, took my pills, and spit them out every night, barely with her back turned. It was midnight Saturday night, or Sunday morning if you prefer, when I was awakened by the vibrating ring of her phone. I lay silent, feeling her move and then get out of bed. She walked across our room to the door and slipped outside. I heard her open and close the linen closet door on the landing, and then silence. Despite all my bravado, I felt sick to my stomach. I knew I could go downstairs to see if she was cheating, but I didn't really want to see or hear it happen. I could have barged in and interrupted them, confronted them. It would have been awkward for them, but I wanted much worse than damn awkward. I could barge in and beat the little bastard half to death, but then the two of them would pose as the victim, and I'd end up in jail. Remember, I was a cop. Every year there were 365 chances inside for some little asshole to make a name for himself by beating me up. Anyway, knowing my luck, that prick would probably die, and I'd be lucky to spend the rest of my life in protective custody with child molesters. So if I want truly powerful revenge, I require them to think like they're still in charge. That means letting that little asshole have my wife until I'm ready. No fucking way. That's not gonna happen. I have a spare home alarm remote taped to the underside of my bedside table. Going downstairs to let the little jerk in, Sheila had to turn the system off. I gave them a couple minutes to get comfortable. I know, I'm a romantic at heart. And then I pressed the panic button. Well, I was the one who just pushed the damn button, and the chaos it caused in the house shook me to the core. What it did to Justin is impossible to even imagine. It definitely ruined his love ambitions for the evening as I watched him leap out of the back of our house to safety. The alarm had gone off. Sheila must have rushed to the main panel and canceled the alarm. I knew she didn't know how the alarm system worked, beyond arming and disarming it. I tried to explain it to her when we installed the system, but she was stumped, and I gave up. I was sure she would think like she had done something wrong and it set off the alarm. I heard her open and close the linen closet door before she went back into our room. I couldn't resist trying to push her buttons. "Did you just walk in?" I asked, mimicking how I'd sound if I'd been roofied. "Where have you been? Is it late already?" "I had to go downstairs to turn off the alarm," she growled at me. "What set it off?" I asked innocently. "It doesn't go off if there's no one downstairs. I'll go and look." "No!" she shouted. "You can't go downstairs in your—" She was going to say, "condition." She knew that if I tried to go downstairs in my drugged state, I'd end up in an ambulance at best and a hearse at worst. That would open up a whole can of worms, and she was smart enough to realize that. I'd already gone downstairs and set the alarm, but there was no one there. I checked all the doors and windows, so go to bed, she told me. I did, and slept like a baby. For the rest of the weekend, Sheila managed to keep her legs together, and I spent an agonizing 10 minutes every time she showered reading a text message on her phone. I helped set up the lock screen, so even though my fingerprint didn't work, I knew her backup access code. They were so damn arrogant that they set up midnight dates via text. That told me two things. They slipped Rohypnol and Julie, and they're totally fucked. By Sunday night, the slut and the jerk had recovered from the psychological trauma of Saturday night and agreed to meet at 11:30 on Tuesday night. This suited me to the core. I had a plan that didn't require much preparation, as long as I could talk to Julie first. On Monday, Sheila went to meet Sally, as usual, and Justin's car disappeared from the neighbor's driveway. I just prayed that Julie was working from home like she usually does. That's how it turned out. "Hi, Mark," she said with a sweet smile as she opened the door. Her smile faded when she saw the look on my face. "Is something wrong? You look so serious." "Julie, I'm sorry, but we need to talk and we don't have much time." "What's wrong?" she asked. "I'll tell you briefly now, but could we meet casually outside the library at 2:30 and have a longer chat?" "All right," she agreed. "But tell me the short version anyway." So I did. Told her about the lethargy, the new regimen of whiskey and pills, the change in sedatives, and the sex. "You bastard," she hissed. "I knew he was sleeping with someone, but I had no way of knowing how. Would it surprise you to know that Justin brings me some sherry every night to calm my nerves and a vitamin pill to boost my immune system? No wonder my head's a little foggy all the time." "How angry are you?" I asked. "Because I want to bury this couple, but I'll go to jail if I hurt them as much as they deserve." "I agree," she replied. "Clearly I can kick the little asshole out, but I want to hurt him too. Hard." "I have an idea," I said. "And if we do it right, we'll be the victims, and they'll get what they deserve." "I'm in," she announced. "I haven't told you how yet." "It doesn't matter. As long as it rains misery and shit on them, I'm in. This is the first time I've been alone with this woman, and I like her already. Beautiful, smart, and vindictive. What's not to like? I told her my plan. It was simple, required no contrived situations, almost no lies, and the police would do all the hard work for us. "Okay," she said. "Give me the rest of the morning to think it over, and I'll see you casually this afternoon." "Oh, by the way," I added, getting ready to leave, "if the police ask you when we last spoke, it was about a spare cable for the printer. I'll swing by town after lunch to pick it up." She grinned. "I'm sorry I won't be able to help you. I'll see you later." And I left. We met up after lunch, and I showed her the cable I'd managed to buy. The old one had apparently been accidentally thrown away. In fact, there was almost nothing to clarify. My plan was simple and easy to execute. Our two biggest problems were not doing or saying anything clever to our cheating spouses so they wouldn't think we had figured them out, and agreeing to accept our roofies on Monday and Tuesday nights, albeit on our terms, like the good little cuckolds we were. On Tuesday, I decided to clean up the garage. I was getting increasingly angry seeing signs that Sheila was getting ready for another date at my house, so I tried to keep my distance and keep my composure. She vacuumed and cleaned up the sunroom, and I noticed a white towel lying in the linen closet, ready to lay on the chaise lounge so they could lounge on it. I didn't contact Julie again, as it was important that whatever we did was business as usual. That evening, at 10 o'clock, Sheila brought me a large glass of whiskey and my pills. She watched me swallow them and then went back to the kitchen to get her own. I spit the pills out and hid the sedative, then swallowed my statin along with a sip of whiskey. My tox screen was going to be consistent. By 10:30, I should have been tired, so I whimpered a little that I couldn't keep my eyes open until she told me to just go to bed. So I did, but tried not to doze off, focusing on why she apparently thinks it's okay to behave this way with me in conjunction with him, after almost 40 years and 2 kids. Not just cheating, but under my own roof, after she drugged me. It's heartless. About 15 minutes later, I heard her go to bed, and I played dead. After checking on me, she went to the bathroom, and I heard the shower running. Then she brushed her teeth. When I heard her flush the toilet, I took the sedative I had previously saved and played dead some more. At 11:30, her phone buzzed on the bedside table. I made an effort to snort slightly, as if I'd been disturbed, and then froze again and slowed my breathing. I heard her slip out of bed, grab a towel from the closet, and head downstairs. Just like the previous time, she left her cell phone by the bed. Well, Who was she going to call? 5 minutes later, her phone buzzed again. Another text message. Despite the situation, I couldn't help but smile. It was a message from Julie, asking why Justin was knocking on the door of our glassed-in veranda, the sunroom, asking if we were okay. I didn't pick up Sheila's cell phone. I'm stupefied and confused, remember? Then my phone rang. Again it was Julie. Again I didn't answer, but it was a signal that I was awake. I went downstairs, trying not to alert them, and stopped in the kitchen near the partially open door. I could hear them having sex, and I felt so disgusted and hateful. What had I done that made her think like I deserved it? If she didn't love me, she could just leave me. But why would she do that? And with that pompous asshole? There was a dim desk lamp burning in the sunroom, and thanks to it and the light from the oven's LED display, I could see well enough to pick up the rolling pin from the countertop where I'd left it. If the police found that too convenient, I would point out that I was in the kitchen surrounded by a dozen or more alternatives for potential weapons. Anyway, I had to stand there and listen until she did me one last favor as my wife. She screamed, "No, don't stop. Please don't stop." It was the best retort I could have hoped for. I burst into the room screaming, "Get off my wife, you bastard!" which I meant, and "Don't worry, love, I'll save you," which I didn't. The asshole twitched mid-motion like a frightened meerkat, and I gave him a damn good sidekick to the side of the head with the rolling pin. The clumsy little asshole staggered, however, and given that I was already partially drugged, the next one was a harder blow than I intended. He fell as if struck by a pole, still immersed in my unfaithful wife. I spotted Julie's face through the window as I played out my last part of the play. "Are you okay, love?" I muttered as she started to scream. "Don't worry, he won't be able to hurt you anymore." Then I gently collapsed on top of them, trapping her under her lover's body, and pretended to pass out. Eventually, the drugs worked properly, and the pretense became reality. As my scene played out, Julie recounted the following. Around 10 o'clock, as had become their habit, Justin brought her a large glass of sherry and a vitamin pill for her immune system. She took them both. Shortly afterward, however, she was in the bathroom and had a coughing fit and threw up in the sink. She didn't say anything to her husband, as he was watching TV, and just yelled downstairs to say she was going to go to bed early. He joined her in bed shortly thereafter, but after a while he got up and disappeared. Then she heard a noise like the sound of a door closing, and when he didn't return, she called out to him, but he didn't answer. Still sleepy and confused, she looked out of her bedroom window and saw him in the garden by the patio doors overlooking our sunroom. She texted Sheila's number to see if we were okay, and then called me when Sheila didn't answer. When I ignored my phone as well, she decided to find out for herself what was going on. When she followed Justin into our garden, she was stunned to see through the sunroom windows her husband having sex with my wife on the sofa. She was shocked, but so outraged by his betrayal that she videotaped them until I burst into the room, possibly drunk, and apparently under the impression that my wife was being raped by a stranger, hit Justin on the head, and then fell over. At this point, she stopped filming, called 911, and told the cameraman that the police and 2 ambulances were due at our address. I told her to tell the truth at every opportunity and not to try to guide the police in their investigation. Let these creeps work for a living, and if they do their job properly, justice will be served. Practically everything in her story was true. The only deception was that the coughing and vomiting was self-induced. I was awakened by a paramedic trying to get my attention. I was stupefied and very tired, but I knew I had to do something. But what the hell was it? Ah, that was it. "My wife," I muttered. "Is she okay? Did he hurt her?" "She's fine," he assured me. "She's talking to the police now." I slipped back into unconsciousness. The next time I woke up, I was in the hospital, and a doctor and a uniformed policeman were staring at me intently. I have no idea what time it was. The doctor was the first to speak. "The attending paramedic was concerned about your reactions to stimuli. It appears that you may have been under the influence of drugs and/or alcohol. I'd like to take your blood for a blood test if you agree." I nodded in agreement and slurred my words. "Do what you need to do, Doc. I've got nothing to hide." He took the sample, and I fell back on the bed and fell asleep. The next morning, I woke up around 9 o'clock. I got up slowly and noticed another uniformed cop sitting next to the door. He looked to be in his early 20s. "Are you all right, sir?" he asked politely. "I think so," I answered. "But I have no idea why I'm here. I'll leave it to the boss to explain himself if you don't mind. It's beyond me." Shortly afterwards, a nurse came in and, seeing that I was finally awake, offered to bring me tea and toast. God, I love the NHS, the Public Health Service. While she was checking my blood pressure and temperature, the policeman came out and I heard him talking quietly into his walkie-talkie. He was still talking when he came back into the ward. "Of course, sir. Yes, I'll tell him now." The nurse left, promising to send someone over with my belated breakfast, and the cop walked over to the bed. "Boss is on his way here on another case right now. Should be at our place in half an hour or so." He gave me a hard look. "Do you agree to wait, sir?" he asked. I smiled crookedly. "Quite, because we both know that if I try to leave, you'll have to arrest me. That will make you angry, and I'll have to eat breakfast in handcuffs. Let's be civilized, shall we?" He grinned at my answer. "It's nice to deal with a professional, sir. It makes things a lot easier." Then a thought struck him, and he poked his head out the door and spoke to a nurse who walked by. He came back and sat down and started leafing through a Country Life magazine that had been left on a table near the door. He saw me looking at him. "What? Oh, I've just said you're about to be arrested, so we'd both appreciate a cup of tea as soon as possible." Sure enough, 10 minutes later I was eating toast. We were both drinking beer and chatting about the abysmal performance of the England cricket team in the second test in Australia. An hour after that, I was in an interview room at the local police station, arrested on suspicion of assault occasioning actual bodily harm. The investigator introduced himself and repeated the warning. He asked if I understood everything. I wasn't playing games. This offense threatened serious time if I was charged and convicted. Yes, I understood everything. He asked me to recount what had happened the night before. I told him more or less factual information. My wife brought me a drink and some pills. I was so tired that I had to go to bed. Something woke me up. My wife was neither in bed nor in the bathroom, so I went downstairs. I heard a noise like two people fighting, so I grabbed the first thing I could get my hands on and rushed into the sunroom. But I saw a man raping my wife while she was screaming for help. I thought I remembered hitting him, but then I couldn't remember anything else until the doctor woke me up. "Is my wife all right?" I asked. "No one is talking, but I seem to remember someone telling me she was fine." He looked at me with a long, thoughtful look. "She's been arrested too. You collapsed on top of the other man, pinning her down. Apparently, when the paramedics managed to move you both to free her, she tried to attack you with the same rolling pin you were using." I was genuinely offended by this, so my hurt look was genuine. "Why? He wanted to rape her, didn't he?" "Don't you know who the gentleman was?" he asked. I admitted that I didn't know. It was dark and he had his back to me. My mind was all fuzzy too. I don't remember much at all. "It seems," he said softly, "you have interfered with your wife and her lover, your neighbor, Mr. Justin Clark." I just stared at him. I knew that fake surprise or any other melodramatic reaction would cause a shudder, so I just stared at him, like a man trying to reconcile the obvious truth with the knowledge that it couldn't be true. "Can we assume you didn't know?" he asked. I nodded. I wondered, because she had seemed so detached lately. But she hadn't had the chance, had she? Even when we weren't in each other's company, I knew where she was. So I came to the conclusion that it was probably my depression that drove her away, rather than her infidelity. "So let's get this straight," I continued. "I'm under arrest on suspicion of ABH, actual bodily harm. But the man I attacked because I thought he was raping my wife was actually her lover, my married neighbor." "Yes, in a nutshell," he agreed. "Shit, I suppose I should ask how he's doing," I suggested. He screwed up his face. "He's in a medically induced coma. The impact appears to have caused a small but significant cerebral hemorrhage. It's not life-threatening at this point, but it's serious enough." I sat in silence, thinking. "I want to ask about your medical history," he said after a few minutes to let me comprehend the news. We'll check with your primary care physician, of course, but what medications are you taking? I told him about the cholesterol-lowering statins and vitamins my wife had recommended. In fact, insisted I try. He stood up. You are still under arrest, but for now I will not charge you pending further investigation. I know you understand what that means. We both smiled as a sign that we understood what he meant. Then he put on his uniform to take me to my cell. I didn't fuss, didn't protest. They had enough to do. Evidence had to be found and processed. I was warm, safe, and comfortable where I was. Why make a fuss? The investigation went well. Given the severity of the injury I had inflicted on Justin, there was a great deal of care taken in collecting evidence and conducting forensics. Within a week, it was clear that Julie and I had been systematically and cynically drugged for at least 3 months, with a prescription-only drug intended to treat my wife's non-existent insomnia. An examination of the sink siphon in Julie's bathroom revealed traces of vomit containing the same drug that had been used in both houses, in containers clearly labeled as vitamin supplements. The only fingerprints on the containers belonged to Justin and Sheila. These two loyal buddies had given us both the same dose, causing Julie, so petite, to show the first signs of liver damage. Thankfully, this was discovered before the effects became irreversible. Julie's video and our phone records were consistent with both of our stories, and when analysis of my blood samples showed that I was heavily drugged when I hit Justin, the police investigation took a different direction. Examination of the couple's phone records and text messages proved conclusively that they had cooperated to keep Julie and me drugged while they themselves continued their affair. Justin bragged about how much he enjoyed sleeping with my wife in my house while I slept upstairs. He noticed that I wasn't giving him the respect he deserved, and this was his way of repaying me. When I thought back to the content of some of my wife's responses, I rather wished I had hit that bitch with a rolling pin, too. It got even better. Julie had given the police full access to her home, as had I. Neither of us had anything to hide. In checking our computers for signs that Julie and I had actually orchestrated the episode that night, it turned out that the nefarious little cockerel had gotten a little creative with his investors' finances and was putting together a scheme for a big score before leaving for pastures new, or rather, pastures where there was no extradition treaty. They found all sorts of interesting accounts on a laptop hidden in his spare bedroom, including one in my wife's name. She thought they'd take our money and run. He thought the same thing, only she wasn't in the plans, although her money was, as was mine. I so wanted to be there when the cops told her that. In the end, they were both charged with maliciously administering poison with intent to injure, hurt, or annoy another person under Section 24 of the Offenses Against the Person Act, 1861. The maximum jail term, if they are found guilty, is 5 years. They were also charged with conspiracy to defraud. Although Sheila did not work in the financial industry, her text messages to Justin demonstrated her awareness and active participation. The maximum prison sentence was 10 years. Justin was discharged from hospital straight to the police station. Both were under investigation prior to the trial. My wife was sentenced to 2 years in prison for abuse of office and 2 years for conspiracy to commit fraud. Both sentences will be served concurrently. He was sentenced to 3 years for malicious use because Julie's liver was damaged and 5 years for fraud. Obviously, Julie had done her best to help the police track down every penny he had. There was some good news for him. The prison service doctors were confident that his speech should be back to normal by the time he was released. However, God only knows what he will do for a living when he is released. The police have confiscated most of his property under the Proceeds of Crime Act, and even his old school friends were reluctant to give him a job involving money. But that wasn't all. Oh my goodness, no. Once the police made it clear that we were victims, and I wasn't charged with ABH, citing that I had been drugged by an accomplice of the man I was accused of assaulting, I got my old pals in the national press involved. Julie and I, of course, maintained a dignified silence. We had been horribly betrayed by people we trusted and needed space to think. The publicity was received with joyous exasperation. Sheila and Justin were vilified at every turn. No one, not one commentator, not one talking head, could find a single excuse for their behavior. Julie, in particular, was so charming that no man or woman could understand how Justin could leave her bed for any other. Me, not so much. Our two children were in court throughout the whole process. I couldn't sit with them until I testified and was released. I was only on the witness stand for 20 minutes. Offensive testimony was given by forensic experts. My blood tests, Julie's liver damage, the vitamin containers, the texting, the financial forensics. Why that stupid bitch let Justin convince her to plead innocent was a mystery to me. In their texts, they pretty much confessed to everything. Like I said, he thought he was so smart. No! As soon as they heard the plain truth in court, my daughter cut her mother out of her life. Forever. She wrote her in jail not to call, write, or visit her or the kids. If she tries, they will get a restraining order since she is a convicted poisoner. My son took it hard. He was especially close to his mother. He asked if I would be offended if he visited her in prison to hear her opinion. If you feel that way, son, I told him, you should go, otherwise you'll never forgive yourself. But, I warned him, be prepared to be disappointed. The visit came a couple weeks later. He called the same night. You were right, Dad, he said. I am disappointed, but now I'll never regret ending the relationship with her. Apparently, every sentence she said shook him more than the last. It was my fault for not appreciating her, for letting myself relax, for not achieving a higher position in society. It wasn't her fault. The jerk seduced her when she was vulnerable. He groomed her. It was his idea to drug Julie and me. His idea to transfer our savings into his offshore account. Then she switched the illusion dial to 11. I'm going to have a lot of explaining to do to convince your father to take me back, she told him. Mom! You poisoned him so you could screw the man he despised in his own home while he lay in a drug-induced stupor upstairs. Take you back? Next time he sees you, he'll probably shoot you and claim self-defense. Apparently, the guy was so outraged by her ignorance that he allowed himself an additional explanation. You do know that he saw all the humiliating texts you sent to your idiot neighbor, right? He asked her. Dad's main regret at this point is that he didn't know you were cheating with Justin. Otherwise, he could have beaten your brains out with that damn rolling pin. He risked going to jail thinking he was saving you from a rapist while you were laughing at him behind his back with your scuzzy buddy. I was a little embarrassed, but let it pass. They didn't part on the best of terms. In fact, the terms were the same as his sister's. No calling, no writing, no visiting. She had lost her dignity and reputation, as well as her husband, daughter, son, and grandchildren over a sordid affair with an embezzler. She lost most of her savings as well. When I divorced her while she was under investigation, I sold the house and divided our assets between us equitably. She had enough money not to qualify for free legal aid, so she had to pay a barrister for her hopeless defense. I then brought a personal injury claim against her for emotional trauma caused by her long-term malicious administration, etc. By the time she gets out, she will have her pension and not much more. At the same time, Julie divorced Justin. If he thought he was going to get half of their house, he was in for a disappointment. Julie and her first husband put it in trust for their twins. Julie simply has the right to occupy it as long as she lives. Justin, on the other hand, has the right to bugger off and starve in a cardboard box. For months, Julie and I spent a lot of time in the public eye and tried not to let anyone realize that we were anything but the unfortunate victims of two equally despicable spouses. When the pressure of publicity became too much, I took a 2-week break at a secluded villa in the south of France. Julie went to visit a friend who lived in a secluded villa in the south of France. We realized that we had shown great trust in each other, and that meant a lot after we had both been betrayed. We were friends, then lovers. Until eventually, I put my share of the sale of the house in the bank and moved in with Julie. My children love her, and their children have a new grandmother. Julie's twins get along well with me, too. Well, I'm not Justin. We are not married and probably never will be. But I'm proud to call her my life partner, and I know that if I bore her, she will hopefully tell me it's over. I know that she won't act behind my back. I know she feels the same way about me. I started this story explaining that I was depressed because I wasn't getting sex. Julie offered compensation because her husband was the one getting the sex I was missing. The debt was paid in full that first week in France. That woman is a wildcat. How a jerk could leave her bed for a simpleton mistress like Sheila remains a mystery to me. We're still taking vitamins every night, but the right ones now. Julie stopped drinking to help her liver recover, and I stopped too. I want to live as long as possible waking up next to her. I've said before that Julie is beautiful, smart, and vindictive, and I already love her. I was only partly joking at the time. Now it's the absolute truth. She lost her husband to cancer, raised 2 kids alone, and was betrayed by that bastard. And yet she can still love, and she loves me with all my faults. What a woman!